Hi, this is Professor Swift, and today what we're going to talk about is strikes and lockouts under the National Labor Relations Act. One thing I want to make sure that you understand, and that is the rules for strikes and lockouts in regard to the public sector, that would be police, fire, teachers, is different than for the private sector like the National Football League, Baseball League, GM, Ford, etc. With the public sector in Michigan, they're not allowed to strike. It's against the law to strike. But that's not true in the private sector. When the National Labor Relations Act promotes labor peace, part of labor peace is the recognition that in order for a union to have power, they have to have the power to strike. And in turn, in order for an employer to turn the corner during negotiations, they might have to lock employees out. So here today, we're going to talk about what is a strike, what is a lockout, and when can they occur. So do you want to introduce yourself for the staff?
Yeah, my name is Stephen Kowalski.
And Pradeep is here too.
Hi, everyone.
And he's been through quite a few tapes today, so he's kind of a little tired, right?
A little bit.
A little tired, okay. So let's talk about strikes. What are strikes?
All right, so strikes are kind of the union employee's friend in a collective bargaining negotiation. Once they've kind of hit an impasse and they can't make any more forward momentum with negotiations.
Now I want to stop you there because impasse is a technical term in labor law, and it means that you've hit a deadlock.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to reach impasse to strike. You do have to reach impasse if you're the employer to lock employees out from coming to work. But with strikes, you can go on strike if one, you have like a serious safety issue, or two, if the contract is ended. But you don't have to have impasse in order for a union to strike. But you do need impasse for the employer to lock out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But a strike is essentially when workers collectively, they'll stop working. Usually they'll pick it outside the place of employment, kind of get some media attention going to what they're striking for, whether that's to get what they want in their negotiations of their collective bargaining agreement, or as you said, a safety issue.
Okay, so a strike is when we call it a work stoppage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just went through that with General Motors, and that lasted a long time, didn't it?
Yeah, it was about a month, right?
Almost two. So what you have there is you have a situation where the contract is coming up to be renegotiated. It ends, and on the date that it ends, the union votes to strike, and they walk out. And so when they strike, there's no cars being made, right?
Yep.
Does that put economic pressure on the employer?
Yes, absolutely. It makes them not be able to fill orders. I know in GM's case, they did build a bit of a surplus before expecting the strike, but even then, if that strike goes on for, as GM's did, nearly 2 months, then that surplus runs out and they really start to feel it.
Okay, what happens to the employees during that time? Do they get paid by the employer?
They aren't paid by the employer, but they are paid by the strike fund from the union, although it is usually a lot less than their regular wage they would have made from the employer.
Sure, they're barely making $200 a week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, a lockout, you do need impasse. The employer needs impasse in order to legally lock out its employees. What happens when you lock out the employees?
You might not be producing anymore, or you may have brought in non-unionized work to fill in the gap and keep producing and show the employees, hey, we want these things because we need them, or this is what's kind of going to happen here. And it usually will also help to break that impasse and get them back to the table.
Okay, so it's fully legal then, you're saying, for the employer to say, okay, you're out on strike, you can't come back to work until the union comes back.
Yes.
Could they allow employees to come back one by one and break the union?
I believe so. Yes, they can.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, their fellow unionized employees will not be happy with the employees that are choosing to break the strike and go back to work.
That's true. That's an understatement. Okay.
That's kind of a personal basis, I guess, for those employees.
That's true. Okay, what's the next subject you wanted to talk about?
So the next subject is the wildcat strike. which is going to be when the union doesn't call for a strike, but the employees decide to strike anyway. And this could be during the collective bargaining agreement, after it has expired.
Now, wildcat strikes, are they legal?
No.
All right, good. If you were going to buy a lottery ticket, you should do that today. That was a good guess. But okay, wildcat strikes are not legal. Why?
Because they aren't sanctioned by the union, so then they're not protected under the NLRA.
Very good. That's a very good answer. And the other thing is that typically wildcat strikes occur many times after the major agreement, like with General Motors, that's been settled. And then you've got smaller units that are like with subcontractors or smaller GM units, and they go out on strike because they don't like a little piece of the contract. They don't have sanction by the union, the contract's been settled, so they really don't have any reason, legal reason to strike. So a wildcat strike is thought of as some folks that have gone away from the union and they've brought about their own strike, and it's not legal.
Yes.
Okay?
And they could very easily be let go for the wildcat strike at that point too.
That's true. Very good. They could be fired for a wildcat strike.
And then this here is something that go ahead and go to the canvas after you're done watching and give this a look. This is an example of a wildcat strike that broke out in Romania at a Ford plant in late 2017, where they were actually trying to kick out their union leadership, along with fight for a couple of safety concerns at the factory.
Okay, great. I'll take a look at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.